I'm Kathy Tirollo. I live in Orange, and I have lived in Orange for all my life. Other than maybe 7 years, we moved out to Beacon Falls to a senior complex, and it was wonderful. We both enjoyed it, but as Joe got busier than heaven, we decided we would come back home to Orange. I was so used to the routine of living in Orange. And both my sons are presently my neighbors. And my daughter lives in Bethany. And she's got a farm. My daughter and her husband are farmers. But thinking of Orange, I think that's just what she loves. And not too much when she lived with us, but she now is a farmer, complete with cows, goats, bees, extensively with bees, but other than that, and flowers. She's beautiful, beautiful garden of flowers. And Joe and I have been together since presently I was about 16. And we married, we've been married
62 years.
Yes, 62 years, and are proud of it. Yeah, there were good times and bad, but we enjoy each other doing things together. Everything's, together. But let me.
Your name?
My name is Joe Tirollo.
Let
Joseph.
him talk a little.
And I moved into the town of Orange in 1953, where my mother and father built a house on Dogwood Road. Ever since then, I was a resident of town outside of the 7 years we moved out. Now we're back, and we built a house here on Norman Street, right across from my son. My son and I run a bus company, Tirollo Bus Company, and we service the town of Orange and Amity. I could remember, my father-in-law used to tell me when we first got together, he moved to 329 Racebrook Road. I got the address right?
Yeah. Yes.
And he used to say when Racebrook Road was a dirt road when he built a house in 1930 on the corner of Norman Street and Racebrook Road. It went up to, I think he said Orange Hills Country Club. And that's where it ended. And of course, as you can see, 114 now is the main thoroughfare from 34 right down to Route 1. And I can remember when we lived here when the Air National Guard now built the barracks for their personnel. And it's still in existence, which is owned by the town, I assume, right now, the land, and the house is being purchased. I could remember back when the halfway house was on the corner of 114 and Route 1. And next to it was the Orange Roof. And we used to run in there for sandwiches and had the best food you could have. But since then, of course, it's been changed, been knocked down. Trailer Town is just about gone. And but I could remember some memories on the Post Road. The old police department, which I served for 28 years as a supernumerary. Served in the Orange Fire Department for 40 years and went out as a communication lieutenant. And at that time, it was all volunteer. It is still all volunteer, I should say. At that time, it was all volunteer. And it was mostly members from the town of Orange. And right now, it's very difficult to get personnel to join the fire department. But we're still in existence. I tell you, the fire department is still in existence. And so I know my wife could come in with a couple other stories about her brothers and her.
Let me interrupt you. When you say fire department, a dedicated fireman, and lo and behold, our granddaughter, who is turning 18, has become a junior firewoman, I guess it would be, and is involved there. She's in training and occasionally will go. They let her know what fires she's allowed to come to. But to think on that part of, she's taken after her pop and carrying that tradition on, a volunteer in the fire department.
And she hopes to become a full-time when she becomes of age.
Can we talk about your history?
Sure. As we spoke earlier, I was born on 329 Racebrook Road and lived there until we built the house across from us, this present house, at 85 Norman Street. It was part of my dad's land, and we separated it and bought more land just to get enough, and we were allowed to build. We got through once through zoning, only to be told, you didn't mention that it's not a road, an approved town road, which it isn't still an approved road. It's on the maps, but all the Tirollos live on Norman Street. Thinking of me going to elementary school, it's hard to believe, because of the fact Joe works with the bus stops for the town of Orange, and it's quite a headache. Every parent wants their child to go out the front door and get on the bus, but sometimes it's just impossible, and timing for the bus drivers to get them to school. But my part of the story is I would come out of our home on Racebrook and walk to the corner of Racebrook and Route 1 and get a Connecticut company bus and take me to Mary L. Tracy School. And that continued till they were enough bus drivers, I guess. I don't know what held it up, but it was fine. We didn't know any different of it. And I rode on the Connecticut company bus to go to grammar school. And I did go through Mary L. I was one of the last classes to go from 1 to 8 there. Then I went to the junior high. And I also went to the high school and was a graduate of Amity. And as far as after graduating, boom, children came along, after we were married, I should say. And I was very involved in town, whether it was Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, and things involving the children. And the boys, baseball, of course. But I think, as far as Amity, it's hard for me right now to think back. And I myself worked at Amity as a secretary and put in 20 years at Amity and loved it. I drove to Bethany, and even after I retired, I was called back to work for the special ed department and just to fill in with somebody that was out. But a lot of memories from working all those years. And so,
I want to pause for a second just to let the clock.
oh,
Yeah.
forgot about that.
Kathy, can you tell about, when we come back on, can you tell about your parents and what they did when they were here?
Tell them
why they were here?
Okay.
where they lived.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
them where your brothers and sisters were born.
Yeah, okay. That's it. Our family, the Moat family, my mom and dad came from Bridgeport originally, and when they moved in to Orange, which was on the Post Road, and two of the oldest were born and brought to that home. But the rest
When
of
did they move to Orange?
We don't know the
Pardon?
date, no. Do you know the date when they moved into Orange roughly?
It had to be in the
Roughly?
1900 or?
1925 probably.
yeah, thinking
Because
of,
they built the house in 1930
Okay.
on 329 Raceburg Road, so they had to be, I would say the early 30s, mid 30s. They
yeah,
would move to the corner of Smith Farm and Route 1. That's the old Loomis house, as you probably know who they are. They lived there, and then her dad built the house here at 329 Raceburg Road, and that's where they grew up. Her brother George, her brother Walter, sister Alice,
Yeah.
and sister Marie,
Richie.
and their
And
brother.
what was his profession when he came here?
My dad,
Yeah.
my dad worked all his life, I think. I mean, he was in the Navy, but when he came out, his job was in New Haven, and of course there was only one car. My mother never drove.
Was he commuting from Bridgeport to New Haven?
No, from
No,
Oh, this is.
This is-
moved to Orange.
yeah, once they got to this house here in Orange. And he worked at National Folding Box. It's a big company. It's not there now, but he worked in the printing department and retired from that company. And quiet, very quiet man, but when Dad spoke up, you knew he meant you did something wrong. He just had to raise his voice. But, and my mom was a homemaker. And,
she served on the Board of Ed.
oh, correct. My mom, I have a booklet that dates back to 51 that the Holy Infant Church was built. My mother was, of course, in what they would call the Ladies' Guild of the church, and my dad was a Sunday passing the basket, and so they were very active in the Catholic Church. And my sister Marie almost made it to be the first bride in Holy Infant, but it was Buckles. I can't recall which her first name, but she was a Buckles and she was the first. And they built a home right next, no, this is another, on Old Tavern, yeah. But getting back to my mom was, as I had said, a homebody. Mom never worked because there was one car and she never drove. She relied on a neighbor to take her grocery shopping. Where was it? In West Haven. There was nothing in Orange other than Miller's Market. I mean, you had no big stores then, and that's where she did it. She I don't know if I mentioned to you that she was on the Board of Ed for a while. I did mention it. Well,
No, you're adding now, and I think that's important to know.
yeah, it was 19, let me think. I'm not seeing it. Here it is. It was 52. And that would have been, who was on the board? She was on the board, but I'm trying to think why. Oh, my brother Richie was in the school and instrumental when they did the dedication, and he had put things, everybody had something to put in that cornerstone. And I understand that it has been opened, but I could be wrong about it.
And which school was that? Was that Mary L. Tracy or was that?
Orange Center School it was
So
called.
they changed it and they did.
It was called Orange
Yeah.
Center School.
Stuff?
Yeah,
Oh.
Orange Center School. It wasn't Mary L. I think she was still in there, you know, definitely, because
That's great.
remember, you know, I remember her being there, you know, white hair, just like me. Work hard to get it. But,
And so you grew up on the Post Road, on Route 1?
pardon?
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
You want me to say a few things about
Well,
it?
you grew up in this area.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
You're
Yeah.
familiar with the Post Road and what it was like back when you were a child.
right.
Oh,
Do
yes.
you have any memories of
Well, at
besides
the,
riding a school bus? That was, it's amazing.
the halfway house at the corner, across the street on Racebrook and Route 1, on the other side was a little restaurant, coffee and thing, the Motor Chef. And
remember that.
we were allowed, because, I mean, there wasn't traffic on Route 1 like today with traffic lights. And as my girlfriend and I, we would walk down there to get ice cream. And I would ask from time to time if I had enough money. I want a banana split, but don't put the banana in it. But foolish, but I don't know why. But let me think. Next to it was called the Holiday House, I think it was called. Was all kinds of small knickknacks, like a Home Goods, but back in that day, that was what it was. And then after that was a gentleman, Mr. Harris, had a shop. What did he actually do, Joe? Do you remember?
Refinished furniture.
Refinished furniture, yeah, yeah. And of course, Vinnie's Hardware. I could go right down. And then Vinnie's Hardware, then came Exxon gas station. And I tell you, almost all the way to, of course, Vadney Fuel with our neighbor who was right up the street. And let's go to the other side
The
of
Wilson. You got the Wilson on the corner of Orange Center, right across the Orange Center.
Wilson H.
Wilson H. Lee.
Wilson H. Lee.
Right.
And my sister Marie worked at, it was in there also in Wilson H. Lee, but it doesn't come to mind what the company was called, but that's where she had a job prior to getting married. But, and across the street from that was Robert Hall of clothing goods that you don't hear of anymore. And that was one of my first jobs at 16, working there. But come back on, then Matthews and Toll was on there. Matthews, Connecticut National Bank, which is now not, it's a bank.
Bank America, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's Bank America, and then Jean's office,
Well, it's an accounting firm.
an accounting firm.
Inside Bank America.
And I wish I could think of who was in the Olive Garden, but it was a restaurant prior. But at that kind of
It was
age,
the Plank House. I thought,
Yeah,
Plank House,
but I don't know if there was anything before the Plank House.
I don't think so.
I think that was a new build.
yeah.
Yeah. And then years later was Michael's Jeweler, and that's still there. Then Railroad Salvage was where Ocean State Job Lot is now. And then next to that was Overhead Door.
Railroad Salvage?
Yeah, what is that?
It's the same type of thing as Ocean State.
Oh,
You buy
Yeah.
and sell
Yeah.
inexpensive stuff
yeah.
Yeah,
and deals, yeah.
In fact,
yeah.
I think they're in West Haven right
There-
now.
I think so too, on Campbell
The
Avenue.
Campbell Avenue,
Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think it's the same type, but
No.
I remember going there. They used to have 4 or 5 policemen every weekend, just directing traffic to go to Railroad Salvage. And we used to direct traffic at Railroad Salvage. I remember when we go back to McDonald's,
Yeah.
and where they used to have 4 or 5 policemen directing traffic at McDonald's.
Oh,
It was so busy on a Saturday on a Saturday that the traffic was unreal going into McDonald's. That's when friend Nance used to run it, and then next to that was
The golf range.
the golf land,
right.
and inside the golf land was a professional bowler. He used to drill balls for the bowling alley, and he was a professional bowler. I can't remember. Valenti was his last name. And we go back, and then, if I remember correctly, the fella that owned golf land, I can't recall his name right now, he built a hot dog stand for his son, Ricky.
I don't remember that.
He used to sell hot dogs right next to McDonald's. And I think, I'm not too sure, the fellow that owned it used to be married to
Judy.
Sharon Hine at one time.
Ooh,
Or no, I'm sorry. It wasn't married to Sharon Hine. It was Sharon Hine's father. He was a professional hockey player. Played for the Blades down in New Haven. His name was Rick, but Sharon Hine, I think that was her father.
okay.
Who was married, I know married to Greg right now.
Oh my God.
I think if you ask Sharon, she would know a lot about it, because I did talk to Sharon about her father.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember his jump land. They used to have. the
Oh,
trampoline.
right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was a hot dog stand built right next door to McDonald's. And it was run by, what was the fellow's name that that had the golf land? Do you remember? I can't remember it off the top of my head. But yes,
It may come to me.
and if you come down further, I remember a speed shop on the corner of Lindy Street
Yes.
and Route 1. And I bought my first tractor from Mr. Funk. 1953. He sold me his first B10 Alice Chambers before he actually, I guess him and his son right now, Roger, built a place where it is presently. But he was in the corner of where that speed shop was, and then the speed shop opened up when he moved across the street.
Amazing.
And of course, you forgot to know about the Garden Restaurant up the road.
Yes, yes. That was across from
The police department.
old
police department.
police department was a restaurant called the Garden Restaurant that my mom and dad would go on Wednesday or Thursday nights. It was like a ritual. And my dad played shuffleboard. They had a whole, it was like a garden room. And it was a longest shuffleboard, and he would play with the men, and my mother loved cards. And
So it was a restaurant.
yeah, it was a restaurant. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was a nice, good eating place.
Yes, yes.
Of course,
It was an older gent that ran it, and the house, his daughter lived in a brick house, and that last name was Herbst, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And
You go.
they lived in Orange a long time, but now they're in Guilford.
Amazing.
Yeah.
How about the Bicentennial? Do you have any fond memories of that?
I do. I want to watch that video on YouTube because I think it will bring it back to me. Because I can remember George.
Her brother,
and
that's her brother.
That's my brother. Working on that Conestoga wagon. And
With Walt Presputa.
yes, with Walt Vesputa. And Walt was always in good health, thank God, when George started failing. And he would, such a kind couple, I should say, both of them, stopped to see George. It was a good for him to see people that he grew up with, you know. As you age and you don't move about as much, old timers can bring light into your life, yeah.
I think you should mention about your brother Walter, who was injured in World War II, right?
Two, yes.
Or Japan. He ended up being a paraplegic. Paraplegic.
He left high school his senior year. They allowed him to join because of World War II. So he was on the football team and everything, very active, young. And I was, well, how did I say, like 4 or 5, didn't really know the details, but knew he was away from the home. And it was a very difficult time for my mom when she got word that Walter had been injured. And as a result, he lost use, paraplegic, he turned out. So from a young man, he really gave his life for the country. But he lived on, he came home, he added on to the present house, and Mom and Dad added a separate room, a shower that he could get into, where in the other part of the house, we only had one bathroom. And there was 6 of us kids, but it worked. And, but Walt needed a lot of help being paralyzed. And as time passed on, he
drove.
He drove. They equipped his car with hand controls, so he drove. But
I think you said it correctly. He did. He gave his life.
He gave his life. Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, I have the letters that he wrote to my mom, and never really let on what, because he was brought to California, and that's where he was for initial hospitalization, and never told my mother. And when you read the letters, it's heartbreaking that he was so young and wouldn't let on to her, didn't want to worry her, until he was moved to St. Albans in New York, did she fully see him and understand. My mom and dad didn't have, I could say, the money to travel to California to check him, which would have been your first thought, but with 6 of us, Walter was part of the 6, but it was difficult. That's all I can say. Difficult for my mom and dad. I know it was. I mean, I was young at that time, but heartbreaking, heartbreaking. But, and as far as my older sister, who was older than Walter, Alice was her name, and I became an aunt when I was about 4 years old. So there's quite an age difference between, but as time goes on, and now we have the pleasure, we're back in Orange. I have my 2 sons around me. My daughter's in Bethany, which isn't far away at all. And how can I say, life goes on.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. We're very, very fortunate. Our kids never have we had a heartache. There was always good times, and it really is a blessing when Joey, our youngest, came to Joe and said, "We're growing out of our house." They lived on Racebrook Road, right next to the other homestead. And he said, "I want to buy the house. How about, we make an agreement?" And at the time, we were in Florida, because we do Florida in the winter down there. And believe it, when we came home, the house was kind of different. Walls, furniture was out of it, and they were going through changing it. But they didn't change the little apartment which we had for Joe's mom. And that's where we could have stayed in Florida, but no, I wanted to come back, see the grandkids and all. But so at that point, we were living at 85 Norman Street.
Well, it sounds like the family has really
Stuck together.
Right.
Yeah,
but kept you in Orange,
yeah,
and you're all happy to be here.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
Yep.
definitely.
any other fond memories of Orange or
Well-
anything? But really covered some beautiful things.
Well, like I say, I come to Orange in 1953. My dad we used to construct houses. He built houses. He built houses, I know, for the veterans out in Hamden. He built a lot of houses. And he also built a house in Orange. And they're pretty much, they were Orange residents. They stayed in Orange all their life until they both passed. In fact, my mom moved in with us after my dad passed at 85 Norman Street, in that little apartment, which I had, an in-law apartment, which I added on for her. And then eventually, like Kathy was saying, we moved into that. But yes, I could go back memories where there used to be a Gulf station on the corner. I think it's not Gulf anymore, Racebrook Road and Route 1, where there's still a gas station. And all the guys used to come together and hang around at the gas station.
Big outing.
Big outing, yeah. And we did a lot of, like with her brother George, we used to do a lot of, in the racing field, we used to build stock cars out of Seymour and race in Savin Rock, Agawam, Mass., which is now Six Flags, Plainville, Stafford Springs. I think every single night of the week, we used to go out and bring the car. And my wife, who at that time wasn't married, right? We weren't married.
No.
She used to follow us. And we used to go all over bringing we had 3 or 4 race cars, but yeah, we used to bring one to the tracks. I remember going down to Savin Rock and racing there every Saturday night.
How did you get into that? What started that?
Her brother got me involved.
Well, George was very friendly with Pilbro.
Fred Pilgrim, that's
Fred
what it is.
Pilbro, yes. Yeah.
And
And
the-
that's kind of where the town hall is, wasn't
is.
it?
Fred, I think, lived down on Meeting House, across from the church, right?
No, Fred lived on the corner of where the town hall is.
Yeah.
Fred Pilgrim himself lived on the corner.
Because the Clarks. Was there a Clark up there too? Because the Clarks were
No,
all in that area.
it was just Fred Pilgrim right on the corner. He had a garage in the back, and that's where we built the
Okay.
stock car. Fred Pilgrim used to, and would you believe this? He used to raise skunks. Right. He used to have skunks in his house. Well, not some. He used to have one or two that were not the, well, what would you call it? Not
Oh,
D-
you smell.
the smell.
I don't know. Yeah.
Do you smell?
He had no problem at all. He had no problem with him. It was Fred. Now you had Fred Pilgrim on the corner Meeting House.
Fred, then there was a Pilbro that moved down in that house. It's kind
The
of-
cul-de-sac, right,
Yeah.
on the
Right.
left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was his father used to be in the corner
his
with
father.
his father was.
We were talking with the Clarks, and Johnny Clark
Yeah.
said that he was up there in those barns working on those stock cars too.
That was the one right at the town hall.
Right.
The
Yeah.
number was 69. He used to run 69 out of that.
Oh, I
Fred-
thought it was 222.
No, 222 was. The 222 was actually out of Doug Marshall out of Seymour.
Oh, Seymour. Well, you were up there too.
That is cool.
I knew you were into cars because I saw that. Is that a Stingray
Yeah.
garage? Stingray?
1976,
76?
original. I owned it originally. I don't drive it anymore because I can't get in and out of it.
Do you want me to exercise it for you?
It's one of the tough.
Any of the grandkids would love to.
It's a 1970, and it's original. It's 40 some odd years old now.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad has a 78 and L82.
Yeah,
It's only it's a 350.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it still runs.
Yeah, but this one runs good.
Yeah.
I just had it out a couple days ago,
Oh, that's great.
and I wouldn't want to
This needs a
go.
little more work than yours, but
No, this one here is in good shape. It hasn't got many miles on it.
No.
I used to use it a lot. Matter of fact, you could tell them when you used to take it. We
To
only had-
school?
To school. Her car broke down, or I don't know what. She took it to school one, and the kids just couldn't believe that she was driving a Corvette to school.
For you.
now, would that end up at the country fair? Or what
Eh,
was that-
No.
Oh,
He's often thought of it
oh,
to
okay.
take it, but
Yeah.
I think he doesn't want to part with it. You know.
Show it off this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
200th anniversary. Bring it up.
Oh,
to
I'll
the
bring it
car
up.
show.
I'll bring it up. Yeah, I'll bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh,
yeah. It's
great.
and I used to when Freddie Palmer and Sue Palmer used to run the
Yeah.
fair. I had it up there a couple years.
Right, they did the car part. Yep.
The-
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but past couple of years I haven't really brought it up. But it could go very easily up to Orange Center Road.
Well, if you need help,
She's willing to drive.
that's it. I'll come a little early.
And just real quick, what about the history of the bus company?
Oh, our bus company. Okay, it was established in 2002. Okay, I could go back when we used to be owner operator, and actually we're still identified as owner operator in the town of Orange. Not so much Amity now, but I bought my first bus. I took it over from John Capsulatro. He retired from it, and at that time they awarded me that contract. And I bought the bus and the contract. I didn't buy it from him, but I was awarded the contract, bought the bus from him, and I drove that. After that, my son decided, well, I'd like to do it because he's in the landscaping business. Joe The third is in the landscaping business, J&M Landscaping. And he decided, well, I'd like to have a bus too. You know. So what he did
Like
is
that.
Mr. Bill Sperry
Yeah.
retired, and he took over his route, was awarded his route as an owner-operator. And we went from there, and now we seem to grow all of a sudden, and we grow into what we call a big bus company now. And Joe and I still run it. We have quite a few buses. We service Amity and Orange. And of course, we bring special ed children, then special ed to different small schools. And we're still operating.
Why do you like being a bus driver? What are some of the things?
I mean, being a bus driver is unbelievable. Like, I just drove one of the runs today. Not today, I'm sorry, but just the other day. And a passenger got on, one of the students got on the bus, and I remember bringing his great-grandfather to school. Because I used to drive prior to us owning a bus company, I used to drive for Benny Foyer and, of course, John Catt. They both were owner-operators. And I remember driving, Benny Foyer's bus was a standard shift.
Oh, my
Bus.
word.
And I used to drive that for him. At our time, Benny used to be the main driver, but if he had something else to do, he asked me to drive for him. And I think he was a captain on the police department. Of course, he became chief a few years later. And that's when I think he gave up the bus route. And I could go back to Joe Gilson, who was an owner-operator. But Orange had all owner-operators. Was single Frank Knight, who now gave his bus to, not gave it, but passed it down to Polly. And,
Vesputa.
of course, Walt Vesputa. Now Stephen just drives, Walt Hine. They were all owner-operators, single buses. But now it's turned to be Jim's the only. Oh, by the way, we
bought one of Jimmy's.
Jimmy gave one of his runs, so that's how we grow. I'm sorry, that's how we grow. Jimmy gave up a run, we took his run, so now we had 2 drivers, 3 buses. So we had to bring somebody in to help us run one of the buses, and that's how we grow.
Yeah.
It sounds rewarding, being able to provide that for the kids and for the community.
Yes, it is. In other words, it's unbelievable that some of the children we pick up now, bringing their parents and their grandparents to school. I remember picking them up. Where I just seen one of the parents the other day. And I said, I remember picking you up and you couldn't get into the bus. We used to have to hold your hand to get on the bus. Now here you are. Yep. But it's amazing though. These are the people in Orange who never left Orange.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure. Because if you're doing their children and now
That's
you're
right.
thinking of the
Yeah.
next
Yep.
generation.
Yeah.
And I think as a kid, that's like a pretty memorable thing. Like you're getting on the bus every morning,
Right.
Yeah.
seeing that, it's
The same
you're-
face.
And you're the first person to greet them in the morning.
That's correct. And in other words, they have trust in the driver. They know, the drivers all know them. And when we went through the COVID, it was advantageous for Orange to have these type of drivers because they knew the kids. They knew if they, who was getting on the bus and who was sick and who wasn't sick. And so it was.
Yeah. True.
It's true. And you're watchdogs for Orange. That's the other thing.
True.
Oh.
Very true.
People, don't understand sometimes, but bus drivers are out there. They've got the route. They know the routine of what they should be seeing
That's right.
Yeah.
every day. And,
You could hear them calling into the school, call the police. There's a strange car or strange van in this house. Never seen them there before.
Exactly.
Maybe it was just a false alarm
Yeah.
and it was a worker, but who knows?
Yeah.
But
Excellent job.
mhm.
Good. Good.
I'm good.
I don't know if we went on and on, but that's
Great. It was great. And those
and the only other thing that you could tell them is about, your sister Marie married to the Chabelles,
which is an old name.
which is an old name right. Who's in there now? That's where
Gus. Is that
Gus
who he-
Chabelle. I don't know if you know.
I don't remember that.
They
Of
were
course.
next with, I think it's, well,
What's there now? That
Taco Bell, and then there's an eyeglass place.
Oh, Hawley.
Yes.
Yes.
Well,
Hawley.
that was,
AT&T.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
that
That's where the Chabelles lived. There was a house there that was torn down. And,
The
but
barn
the
is-
barn in back now is something where Mr. Chabelle used to refinish furniture. People had come from all over
Yes,
to
he was an-
refinish an old piece.
right.
And, but since Marie has passed, there's only, out of the 6, there's only my brother Richie and me, out of 6.
And then across the street from there was that little market. Used to sell the best sandwiches you made.
Yeah.
Not Nicoletti.
Yes.
Nicoletti's.
Yes.
A matter of fact, about
Hot pastrami grinders.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
A matter of fact, it was back about
Oh, I wish they were there.
5 years ago. We happened to run into Frank Nicoletti.
Did you really?
He was about 95, and he was still going strong.
Yeah.
Memories, we talked memories you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
What he, yep.
That was always a treat.
Yes.
Dad
You
would go,
remember,
Let's
Jim?
go down and get some Nicoletti grinders, and
Yeah.
boy, it was like,
Yeah. You remember Frank's Nicoletti stuff.
yes,
And
yes.
Those places are called Peckingham's across the street.
Yeah,
Don't
that's right.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yep. Where Bonte's
Okay, right.
Pizzas.
Yeah, no.
There was
Always-
it was a restaurant
It was like a walk.
diagonally there. It was built diagonally. They
Right.
call Peckingham's restaurant.
No, see, I don't think my parents took me out to restaurants.
It was a watering
I'm
hole.
starting to put this picture together.
It was a watering hole for the local bin
Oh, there you go. That's
Yeah.
okay.
at that time. Yeah.
At that
Good
point, yeah.
memories.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know. We went back some memories. I know I'll come up with something, but
Think
Give us a
of,
call. You can have a sequel too.
and I don't know if he'll still tape, but I would ask him about that. Almost sure that Joe put it together. It might even be on YouTube.
Okay.
Did we ever look on YouTube?
No, I haven't. This is the first I've heard about it.
But there is a booklet.
I'm going to call Emma this time.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure Joe was involved in
All right.
putting that together, getting the information. He didn't put the book
That would
together.
be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
We'll get that.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.